Welcome to this video on the 1.2.2 update for Gatae Et Impera, which was released on the 16th of August 2017. If you're watching this in the future, this video is going to consist of three parts. I'm going to do a very quick overview of the release notes. I'm not going to go into detail, I'm not going to read them out. Then I'm going to do a section on what the bit that I was probably most interested in, which is the historical families, and then the third and final part will be a very top level overview of the changes to the Barbarian factions. But before I really get started, I'd like to really give a really big shout out to the team that gives us Gatae Et Impera. It is a fantastic mod, and I do really appreciate the effort that these guys put into it, the time they put into it, their thought, their detail, the way they interact with the community. I think that is absolutely fantastic. A special shout out for Dresden, who actually worked on the historical families aspect of this update. So we're going to have a quick run through of the changes. As you can see, guys, here we got changes to battles. So there's changes on health, fatigue, attacks morale, and tweaks to the morale systems. Towers have been slightly nerfed. Added new shield wall ability to some barbarian units. Hoplites and shield wall should be better against pikes. Tweaks to certain formations like Tuxedos. Slight nerf to Gastrophides unit. I've got no idea what that is. Added guerrilla deployment ability to multiple German units. Added hiding grass and campaign stealth to guerrilla type units. And the Barbarian Overhaul I will talk about in more detail later on, and the same as the historical character system, which I will talk about next. And the final bit that I want to talk about in here, I'm not going to go through all the balancing changes and fixed changes. I'll put a link in for any of you guys that want to read those in detail. Is population economics. It's an added fix the population system's impact on region economics. High foreign population reduces subsistence income. Low total population reduces total income. So I think this is will be quite a big factor in when you go out and conquer, because if you lose a lot of population, then that is going to really affect your total income. And it says higher relative class 1 noble, class 2 citizen populations will increase agriculture and industrial income respectively. Note that these ratios are relative to the total citizen number class 1 to 3, not the total population number, so foreigners do not count against these ratios when determining class 1-2 bonuses. Now, I must admit, population economics is one of these dark arts that I'm still coming to terms with. If any guys have got any really good tips on that, I very much appreciate it. And I think what I'm going to do now is get onto the historical family system. Now, I'm not going to go through this in massive detail, because the idea behind this, and I do really like this, and I'm really on board with Dresden on this idea of, because I really like the idea of having a family tree. I missed it from Rome 2. CA had a very good stab at it in Attila, and then of course it disappeared again completely in Warhammer. And I really hope that if they bring in a new historical series, that the family tree is back in there, because it just adds a bit more immersion to the game, and I'm really looking forward to playing this. And as you can see here, the idea is that you will now get this. Well, I'll read it out, guys. The basic concept is that occasionally a new family member will be spawned in your ruling family. This new general will be a historical figure from factions, a more randomly curated general from others that have less historical sources. On average, about every 50 turns or so, events will occur. The number is very different for various factions and historic generals, so it is not a fixed value by any means. My goal is to have the system somewhat fluid to the player, so it seems like a natural progression in the game. And I think this is the idea, that you're going to get historical characters coming in. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just show you the process, and this is the kind of precursor which Dresden put together, showing a family before a historical figure actually comes. You can see it's just a normal screen like that, and then what actually happens is that a triggered event, you get a message like this: royal heir comes of age after careful upbringing and various tutors to the sciences and methods of warfare. This man is assumed his rightful place in the member of the royal family. His lineage has been traced back to the beginning of the Suclid family, but his future is his own to mould. He will take the place among the great names of the family like Suculus or Antaricus, or simply fade into the obscurity of history. You can see here you get the option to welcome him into the family, and then what you get here is the new royal heir. This is historically, and that actually tells you who the new royal heir is, gives you a little bit of historical background. I only clicked and dragged on that because this is a web page. And then what you actually get here is an example that Dresden has very kindly put in, which says you've now got this new family member joins as a statesman who is then is available as a general. So that's the mechanic, and so it's quite a simple change, but I think it really adds a lot to the immersion of the game. Again, a big shout out to the DEI team for giving us this type of feature that really enhances the game and keeps the playability going. I mean, it makes me even want to redo factions that I've already done before. And then again, above here it says, now for other factions besides Carthage and Rome have this feature, but I have not implemented Carthage and Rome yet. Well, he has actually implemented it now. Remember, this was written back in July. And the way it actually works is that he's introduced submods, and that's what I'm actually going to talk about next, guys. So I'm just going to click here to bring up Rome. What you actually have to do, and I think the key element with this is if you're going to play Rome or Carthage, this predominantly relates to Rome and Carthage, and I see I've downloaded all 8 parts, and what you've got is 2 groups of 3 submods, one relating to Carthage, so you've got the Barkid family here, and 3 related to Rome, and you've got gens or family Cornelia, family Julia, family July, and then of course you've got the Hanoid family and the Magnoid family there. So if you're going to play Carthage or Rome, you have to choose which submod you want to enable. So effectively you enable the submod for the family you want to play. So for example, I want to play Junai, you just click there. So what I'm going to do now is give you a kind of little bit of an example of what the game looks like when you start a new campaign. It's not a big deal, but I think it's interesting to see. And the first example I'm going to give is the situation where you're not playing Carthage or Rome. So I'll see you once I get into the game, guys. Well, here we are. I've loaded the screen. You can see I've got build 2.2.0. And if I click into the grand campaign, there's not much to see, guys. What you actually see is, and this is what I want to show you now, if you do not have one of the Roman submods actually enabled, you still have Nobilis, Patrici and Equites here. And obviously if you're going to play Carthage, guys, you've got the Hanoid, the Magnoid and the Barkid dynasties. Now there is a slight issue, guys, if you can't remember from when you played vanilla or an early version of DEI, probably I think it was version 1.1, is that the original faction names here were Julia, Junai and Cornelia. So when you're choosing what faction you've got to kind of try and remember the relationship between here. But if you've got a specific faction in mind, guys, it's not that big a problem, because what I'm going to do now is quit out the game and then come back in again just to show you what happens when you actually select a faction. And the faction I'm going to select is Junai. So I'll see you in a minute, guys, once I get back into this screen. And here we are, guys, we're back on the main screen, and I'm just going to click on the grand campaign, and you can see, look at that. Once you enable one of the Roman family submods, you get the old family names back. So if you're not sure, guys, or you can't remember, well, I've already shown you, but if you're playing a game, just enable one of the mods, the family that you do want to play, and that's all there is to it, guys. And then you're in business. And what I'm going to do is start the campaign just to show you that there is no substantial changes when you first go in. Right, guys, here we are. We're on the campaign map. I've skipped over all the usual starting videos. As you can see, the starting position is exactly the same. And well, there, and let's just have a quick look at the family tree. As you can see here, we've got there Junii. As I say, it's important that the submod matches the family. This medal here is still reflecting the kind of pre 1.2.2 update, the Patriciae, but I don't think it really makes a difference. It's just a minor little issue. I think I probably would have noticed it if I wasn't looking for it, guys. And I think that is about it. I mean, the one thing I do want to have a quick look at, sorry for this deviation, guys, but this is the we click here. I just want to have a quick look. If I select Rome, region growth, it's the region growth, population, and that's the stats. I don't know if those stats are actually going to be beneficial, but anyway. And I think that's all I need to talk about families. I hope you're going to enjoy them as much, playing them as much as I will. And what I'm going to do now, guys, is I'm going to quit back to the main menu to do the unit faction overview. But the only way I can really do that is with custom battles. So I'll see you once I get back onto the main menu, guys. Oh, here we are, guys. We're back on the main screen again. Sorry it's all the jumping backwards and forwards, but this is the only way I can do this video, and what we're going to do is open a custom battle. Now I'm going to reiterate, guys, this is going to be a very top level overview of the changes. It's not going to be like in detail. I mean, to do that I would have to make a video on every faction and try and do a comparison, and I'm not sure if I got the time to do that, to be honest, guys. So this is very much kind of my first impressions, some of my comparisons with the different functions. And now let's just get straight into it, guys. Now the first thing that will strike you, and this is a common theme with all the changes and updates to the Barbarians, is the fact that the rosters have actually been reduced, not increased. So if any of you guys come in thinking, oh, they're adding lots and lots of cool units, I think the philosophy's been more to reduce the number of units but make them more effective. Because I must admit, I've played an Iceni campaign, and there's lots and lots of units and you just don't use them. I think we're all guilty of it. You select your favourite units and that's the ones you always fight with. So like, for example, the original general roster for the Iceni was 6. It's now been reduced to 3. And I think to a certain degree these units have now been rebalanced, and we've now got, so we've got basically 2 infantry units and 1 cavalry unit. And now I'm going to plead guilty, guys. My instinct is always to have cavalry. I like my generals to be mobile. It's the only time I really recruit infantry generals is if there's no other choice in the faction, like they've got a really cool unit, or I want a cheap general to sit in a settlement way behind the lines. But my fighting armies, I must admit, I do like my generals mounted. So, and now again, we're going to go straight onto the melee units. Now the original roster pre this update was 11. It's now been reduced down to 6. But I've kind of had a quick look at the stats, and what they've actually done is that they've balanced these units in a compromise between all the wide variety of the units that were there before. What they seem to have done is compressed the units down. They've all been renamed as far as I can tell. There's a few that are still there. I think the Legionis Druidus is left over from the original there. Let's see, the Curio Runo are from the original roster. Curious Lenos, I think this is a variant. This is Painted Warriors. Yeah, the Britannic Mercenary Painted Warriors, and that is actually a mercenary unit. That's interesting. So maybe that's not actually in the proper roster. So there are a few mercenary units mixed in here as well, which I apologise for, guys, but this is the only way I can do it. But mainly these units have been rebalanced and reassessed. I mean, to give you an example, the Kudagos on the end here, which are in the original roster, They've actually been nerfed slightly now. I think let me just find it. The original stats was 56. Let me just click that so I can move over. Was 56 attack, 53 defense, and an armor of 12. So what they've actually done is nerfed this guy a little bit. They've kind of reduced his attack to 50 and his defense. So, and again, I think this is very much a feature of these new rosters. Now, again, the spear infantry is being greatly reduced. I mean, originally it was 6 units of spears. It's now been reduced to 2, and I think these are far more kind of well balanced again compared to the original roster. The original roster, you had lots of different spear units, but I mean they were very similar. And again, I think just having 2 ones here, I mean, they're not brilliant, but then I think basically when you fight as a barbarian, it's all about attack and not standing and fighting. I mean, especially these guys, they're not going to stand against hoplite units and pike units, are they? Even Roman legionaries. Missile units, you still have the same number of missile units, but what they've actually done is that they've actually increased the range of these guys, these slingers, from I think originally it was 190, they're now 215. So they've actually made these actual individual units a bit more useful. So you've got 2 types of slingers and the skirmishers, but I think what we've actually done is lost an archer. You've gained a second set of slingers and lost an archer here. So they've taken away the archery capability from the Iceni. It's very much a slinger unit, but they've compensated by giving you 2 pretty good long range slinger units. These guys should be able, especially these guys, missile damage of 8, ammunition of 20. I mean, these guys should really be able to carve up opposing forces. I mean, they're going to be quite a useful unit to have. Now, cavalry, originally again, the number of melee cavalry units has been reduced. I think it's actually been reduced. Well, originally it was 4, now it's down to 2. And again, I think what they've actually done is struck a balance between the 2 different values of the 4 cavalries and given a more moderate range here. I mean, these guys are pretty good. I mean, they've got some pretty strong melee defense, especially if you can get them into the field early in the campaign. I mean, they've got reasonable armor as well. And again, the missile units, you've only got 1 set of missile cavalry. And the Iceni now, this Britannic Raiders, I think there was 2 missile cav, now we're down, it's been reduced to 1. And I think that's about all I can say about the Iceni. I mean, without actually playing the faction and doing some test play with these units, I can't really say what they go, but I can get the theme of where this reorganisation's come from, guys, in the sense that, you know, they've reduced the rosters down just to make it more interesting and kind of balance the units out. Now I think what we're going to do now is go on to the Averni. I don't really want to dwell too much on this because otherwise the video is going to get too long. Right guys, welcome to the Averni. Now the roster again has been reduced compared to the original roster, and what they've actually done is they've reworked the generals, and if I kind of go over them now, you've got early Gallic nobles, late Gallic nobles, early Royal Horsemen, late Garrett's Horsemen. So although it's giving you 4 units, in fact it's only 2 with a late thing. So what they've actually done is implemented reforms into the Averni, and this is also reflected now on the infantry. I mean, the infantry has been reduced, I think, I can't remember now. I think the original melee there was about 8 units of various units, and what they've actually done is again is rebalanced them so that each unit has a specific role. So you've now got Gallic Clubmen, which is I think new. Don't think there was Clubmen in the old roster, and you can see they've got a little bit of attack, a little bit of defense. Obviously these guys are the ones that really go in there, and these would be good troops to come in from the flanks, I think. And of course you've got heavy axemen. I think originally they were light axemen. I think it was there was an axe unit. So you've got an axe unit again, probably quite a useful flank attack unit there. Don't have a lot of armor, and then of course what you've got now is a late Gallic noble and a late Oathsworn, and these are your sword units, and these guys are pretty chunky, but they're late game art post reforms. Got their late Oathsworn, late Gallics, and what they've actually done is the I think the spear infantry is roughly the same size, and again but what they have done is, if I come across here, and I think if I find here, that's it, you've now got an early Oathsworn unit, which obviously once the reforms go through you will be able to upgrade to late Oathsworn. So these could be troops that would be well worth investing, because you can upgrade them. You can see that gets 3776, this is 4680. So getting early Oathsworn would be quite useful if you're building up your armies as the Averni. And you've got Galactic Native there. And of course what you've also got now is you've got 3 Phalanx units, where originally you only had 1 Hoplite unit. So they've actually introduced Phalanx units. If I click on here now, these guys actually have shield wall as opposed to a Phalanx operation. Now that could be quite useful. And what you've also got here is late Gallic heavy infantry. So again, you've got an upgrade path here. So although it's 3 units, it's actually really 2. So you've got early Gallic heavy infantry, and then you've got late Gallic heavy infantry who've got a lot more morale, a bit more armor, a bit more for charge bonus. Not that much of a thing, but every little helps when you're fighting the war. And of course what you've got here is early Gallic nobles, who again have shield wall, but of course then they can be updated to late Gallic nobles, which means they then become a sword unit. So what they're implying here is that you've got a combination sword spear unit here that can fight in a shield wall, which can then be upgraded after the reforms to a purely sword unit. So that's that area there. Again, they've reduced the number of missile troops down. I think it was 4. Now I think now they're down to 3. I can't remember now. I'm trying to read. Apologies, guys. I'm just trying to read my notes as I go through. And what you've got here is I wouldn't say you've got Gallic youths. I think they are Jav cavalry in it. Got some Gallic hunters. They're a bit wussy. Missile damage, range hunt 555. They've actually reduced their range down. So look at that. I suppose they can hide in scrubs. They've got an ambush capability. They've got excellent stamina. And then of course we've got Gallic heavy skirmishers. Looks like all these guys have actually got hide in scrub. That could be quite useful. They've all got a potential ambush capability. But I think as missile, personally, if I was playing the Averni, I'd be looking for AOR missile units. I don't think these guys do. Let's say the heavy skirmishers look pretty reasonable, 16 damage. But yeah, I think I'll do that now. Melee cavalry, again, they've reduced the amount of melee cav. I think originally it was 4, it's been reduced to 2. And again, I've had a look at the stats here, guys, and what they seem to have done is balance these cavalry units in here. I mean, these guys, melee defense 61, they got 14 armor. I mean, these guys, you know, Gallic mighty horse, I think these guys will have quite a positive effect on here, guys. I mean, you'll be able to get in some decent charges with them. And of course, the other thing also is the original roster didn't have missile cav, and you've now got Gallic light horse, which might compensate a little bit for the weaker missile infantry and the loss of the extra cavalry. And so you've now actually gained a missile cavalry unit in here, and of course down here we've got the usual artillery. And I think that's about it for the Averni. And what I'm going to do is skip the Gatae for the moment. I'm not going to follow the order of the race, and we're going to jump straight to the Galatian faction now. Galatian. Where are you, Glacier? There we are. Again, this is quite interesting. What they've actually done is they've rebalanced the faction. You've now got in Glacier, originally I think it was you had 2 infantry, 1 cavalry, and now you've got 1 infantry, 2 cavalry, which suits me fine, guys. And so the general units are pretty all round, I must admit. 44, 50, 58. I think that noble cavalry could be quite useful in the battlefield. You've got a reasonable charge bonus, and they can kind of get stuck in a bit. Now again, but the unit roster has been substantially reduced compared to the previous roster. I think originally you had a selection of 10 melee units in, and it's now been reduced to 5. And you can see you've got Galatian swordsmen, Galatian axemen, chosen swords, Galatian legionaries, who are like a pseudo Romano unit. I've got a feeling that was actually, yeah, I think that was in the original roster, the Galatian legionaries. Again, fairly good attack, very good defense. I think they could make quite a good front line. And of course, the other change also now is you've got these thorax infantry, which is the Greek influence. So you've got Galatian thorax infantry. So what they've kind of done is compress these to give you a bit of variety from axemen and swordsmen for attack, and then you've got your pseudo legionary there, and of course you've now got the Greek influence, which reflects the starting position of the faction, which I think is quite cool. And you've now got thorax infantry. And now down in the spear lineup, again, the spear lineup is, I'm just a quick look, it's actually been increased. The original roster had 3, and again, all these it's worth noting that all these different units have been renamed. It made it a bit of a nightmare trying to do comparisons, because virtually, so if you've played these factions before, guys, the names have all changed. I did try to do it, and I don't know, these guys are, I think, from the original roster. I mean, these are basically your base units, and of course this is new now. You've got Galatian Thuros spears, which is the 2nd Greek unit that's been added to the roster, and what we've also got is Galatian naked warriors. I can never understand why naked warrior has so much good defense. Maybe they're just good with weapons, but they've got very low armor. And of course we've got Galatian champions. The one unit I do miss from this is, I think, what was it now? I mean, you had some quite chunky, I think you had an armoured spear unit in the original roster, which was quite useful when you played, but that's gone now to be replaced by these guys. But I mean, these Thuros spears could stand in a front line to support these legionaries. So maybe if you'd have these legionaries in the front with the Thuros spears guarding the flank, and then or maybe you could have Thuros spears in the center, holding the center, these guys on the flank, because they can operate in the dual role of attack and defense. That could be maybe a way forward. Now, missile units, again, they've reduced the number of missile units down. You've got Galatian youths, which is a jav unit or skirmish unit. They seem to use the 2 terms interchangeably. You've got Galatian archers, which I think you didn't have an archer unit in the old roster. I think you had mainly jav and skirmish and 1 slinger unit, and so you've got a fairly standard archer unit, which could be useful, but I mean, to my inclination, I think especially in the early game, so I can get some AOR units, I think my inclination would be to use the range of the slingers. 190 isn't too bad. You'll be able to get in a few shots of an enemy attacking. So that's okay, guys. Now, let me just read. The melee cav has been reduced by 1. Again, I think the exercise here is being to just rebalance these units so that you don't have, because there wasn't a lot of difference. I think this is the key issue, guys, that some of these factions that had multiple melee cavalry, the differences between them were quite small, and I think these guys now have kind of fairly distinct role. I mean, you've got, obviously this would be your early game cav, which has got 37. I mean, they're still going to be fairly, I mean, they've got a pretty good charge bonus. I mean, yeah, like that. And then of course you'd have your heavy cavalry, which is 50, 58, which I think would be, I think they're actually better than, yeah, 50, 58. So that is the version of the general unit. So I mean, if you teamed up a couple of these guys with the general unit, you'd have a pretty formidable kind of hammer for a hammer and anvil tactics. And the missile cavalry, I think, is just being slightly revamped now. You've got range 85, it's fairly standard missile light cavalry. I think that's very much similar to what was there before. I mean, I didn't write all the stats down because flipping between the two modes was a little bit of a nightmare. So I say, guys, this is really, you can only really compare these units if you get on the battlefield or play the factions. This is just very much a high level overview. Now we're going to get to the Gatae. Before I get into the talk about this the changes to this faction, guys, what I will say is that somebody's already identified a problem with this roster related to baggage units and the naval units, and Dresden has already posted a patch in the forums. So if any of you guys want to play the Gatae, you will need that patch in order to have baggage trains and naval units in your garrisons and as a naval capacity. So, and I'm pretty sure that, knowing Dresden, he will probably get an update out as quickly as possible to fix that problem. I mean, he was very quick responding to it, so it's obviously just an omission that when he was configuring the rosters that he forgot to add those in. So that's a quick point before we go. The roster has been reduced compared to the original Getae unit roster, but again, what they've really done is knocked out, combined together and rebalanced units that had very similar roles. And I think originally you had 9 general units. I mean, you've got some pretty useful general units, but what they seem to have done is moved away from infantry to give you a range of cavalry units, and some of these cavalry units are quite interesting actually, guys. And this is why I've left the Getae to last, because when you look at this is Royal Cavalry. I mean, these guys, we'll just go through them. So you've got some heavy hoplites. These guys, yeah, they're not that good, but I mean, they were really stand in the front line. Foot nobles, yeah, pretty useful. And you've got kind of fairly interesting kind of missile general cavalry unit. Shots per minute, ammunition 15. I mean, that's not bad. That is effectively a horse cavalry. Range 170. That's pretty good as well. I mean, that actually outranges standard missile units. I mean, that could be quite an interesting general unit to play with. And at the same time, you've still got a reasonable melee attack and defense. And you've got Royal Cavalry, which I think is probably a bog standard early general, 38 attack defense, good charge bonus of 32. And this is the one that kind of intrigues me a little bit. You've got heavy horse archers. I mean, this would be quite a nice all-round unit, because you can see you've got missile damage. Range is a bit shorter, so you'd have to be a bit careful how you use the general. But I mean, you've got melee attack 37, 46. I don't know. Maybe this guy is still better. The Dacian, I think maybe Dacian bodyguard cavalry would be more my way. Then of course at the end here you've got your heavy Royal Cavalry. I mean, this guy would be really, really tanky as a general. I think once you've got a reasonable army, it might pay. I think maybe I would probably start with these guys. Where is it? No, not these guys. Where is it here? maybe I'd start with Dacian bodyguard cavalry to start with, so I could have the combination. And then what I would probably do is then later on change my generals to this. Right, the melee units, again, there used to be 11 of them. It's now been reduced to 6, and again, there's been a lot of rebalancing. These are, I think these could be quite useful early infantry. You've got some axemen, so you've got the Sicker it says here's a common short phalanx used by peasants for harvesting. So, I mean, this is your base melee unit, and then of course we obviously get up to the Dacian phalanx man. Now, what I will say is, guys, that some of these units have been nerfed compared to the old rosters. There is some evidence of these guys being nerfed down. I think these guys originally had like 69 defense, 34 attack. I can't remember now offhand, but I think there's been a certain amount of readjustment to these units. Yeah, 44-25. These are the Prani. I think originally these guys had an attack of 56 and a defense of 49. So some of these guys have been nerfed down a bit compared to what they were before. I'm just kind of, I keep pausing, guys. Sorry, guys. I just got to keep looking down. Yeah, I think these guys originally were 38-74. So they've actually got a bit more attack, a little less defense, and they've got, it looks like they've got a bit better armor as well, according to my notes. So basically the melee units there, and obviously you've got these guys here who will be able to really wade in and do some damage on the flanks. I mean, these are very, very good flanking troops. I mean, they can even hack into the jolly old Roman legions. Now, spear units. Again, the number of spear units has been reduced. I think it was 7. It's now down to 4. I mean, it's a fairly standard front line. I mean, I think truthfully the spear units are going to be more flanking units now, because you've obviously got the phalanx units here, which are kind of a bit more there, and of course you can see here these guys have got shield wall. So again, these units have got a bit more clout. 28-76, that's not too bad. These are quite a good starting unit actually. Gatae, chosen spearman. Heavy hoplites. Bonus versus cavalry. Guys have certainly got a lot more armor. I mean, these guys would stand well. And Dacian foot nobles, armor 16 gold. These guys could be. So I mean, these guys are obviously going to form your front line. Your shield, your spearmen would be your cheap units too, because these are obviously smaller units compared to these. These would be your flanking defense, and then of course you'd get the heavy mob to kind of go in on a kind of flanking attack. I mean, get these guys wading in even into units from the side, the rear or the side, and you'd do a lot of damage while these guys hold. Right, let's get down to missile units. Again, the number of missile units has been reduced from, I think it was 9. Just check, yeah, from 9 it's now down to 6. Getae bowmen, these are fairly standard bowmen. I can't remember the Getae youths. Well, these guys here, the slingers, the range could be useful. Dacian archers, Gatae, these guys could be useful. Now, I'd like to see these guys in action. I mean, again, these Getae armor, just have a quick look at their elite archers. 35, 40, 30. I mean, these guys have got a bit more range, but I think in the late game, once you've got your armies established, these guys could be quite useful in a flanking role as well. I mean, you could get these guys in there. They've got the ammunition, and they've got a little bit of range. They could do some damage. They've got reasonable armor. They've got a certain amount of melee attack. I mean, these guys could be very useful, like you would use them to kind of just damage the initial attack, and then you could kind of push them out to the flanks, get round, and they got sufficient melee attack and defense to kind of hold their own. If you compare them with these guys have this guy's got melee defense of 61. I mean, these guys could be useful, but these guys are quite weak. But I mean, these troops could probably stand in a role in the rear to do some rear charges, especially if they were supporting cavalry. I mean, that could be how these guys would be used, but I shouldn't really be talking tactics in here. Again, the melee cavalry has been reduced. I think it's originally 3 units, it's now down to 1. But I mean, again, pretty good charge bonus. I mean, I wouldn't say it's brilliant. It's, I mean, let me see if they got path in shot. I was moving. I'm not sure. I think that could be an error, guys, because these guys. It says these guys can fire whilst moving. I think there might be a bug, an error here. Choice elite within the noble things. I'm not sure how a melee cavalry unit can have fire while moving when they don't have any ammunition. There might be a little bit of a bug there, guys. A little bit of an oversight. Ability to hide in forest. Yeah. So I think there's a slight error there. Now, I think what compensates for losing the melee cavalry is down here, and these are new units. These are your missile cav, and what you've actually now got is, I think the original roster was 3, but they've actually added 1, and you've got some light scout riders here and some Gatae horsemen. Yeah, okay. I mean, these are your skirmish troops, but of course now we're getting on to the interesting ones here, and I think this is what's going to make the Gatae quite an interesting faction to play, is the fact that you've got some heavy horse archers. You can see missile damage, ammunition 15, and 37, 46. They're still going to be quite a useful unit. I mean, obviously they can't go, so you've basically got a unit here that can kind of take on cavalry with their missiles, destroy the cavalry, and again, working in a melee role. I mean, I think they could be quite useful. I mean, they've got a reasonable charge bonus of 33, so I mean, these could be quite useful all-round cav actually. And of course, what you've got here is these station cash fracks. These are the ones that I think you could have some real fun with, guys. I mean, these guys are actually, you know, but look at the armor on these guys. I mean, 20 armor. I mean, they've actually got more armor than our melee cavalry. So what you're actually getting here, guys, and I think this might account for why they've taken away the melee ones, is you've basically got some, I mean, they're equivalent to the Tarentine cavalry, or better than the Tarentine cavalry that you could get with Greek factions, in the sense there. I mean, you've got 15 ammunition, melee attack 37, 46, and here, I mean, these guys here, look at them. I mean, the charge bonus 38. Going in, they've got heavy armor. This is only if you can afford the very high cost of reasonably good defensive gear and large horses able to carry a rider wearing such heavy equipment. Their archery skills are no way inferior to those of any other summation warrior. Their high quality equipment allows them to carry out certain special tasks. So, I mean, these guys have got Parthian shots, fast while moving, hide in forest, disciplined, stamina. They can do the Cantabrian circle, and they can do flying wedge. Now, that's quite unusual for an archer unit, to have flying wedge. Maybe, but that's quite interesting, guys. And as I say, I think if I was picking cavalry for a Getae army, these are the, once I could get them and I can afford them, because they're obviously going to be horrendously expensive, I think these would be the backbone of my army. Similar to what I do with my Greek factions, is where I like to team my general up with Tarentine cavalry and use the Tarentine cavalry in a dual role. I think these are going to be very powerful dual role cavalry, and I think this is where I'm going to stop, guys. Now, there is the Numidians, but I can't. I think most of what's happened with the Numidians is load balancing, so I'm not actually going to cover that faction. I think this is where it is, because it's obviously this video is going to probably get quite long. Hope you've enjoyed this overview of the of the 1.2.2 update. Now, if you've got any comments on units, guys, I'm very open, because obviously this is a very top level view, and I'm sure some of you guys are already getting into campaigns with this. I'd love to get into a campaign with the Gatae, but I just don't have the time at the moment. So got any opinions, feel free to offer, because I want to learn how to use these units as well. And I think on this note, guys, this is where I'm going to leave it. Hope you enjoyed the video, and until next time, whatever you do, enjoy your gaming.